Welcome to Popternative, where we dive into topical discussions from the worlds of pop culture, social media, and sports. Here is your host, Peter Remoliotis, aka PD Beats.
Hello and welcome to the Popternative podcast. This is the podcast and talk show where we have digital discussions from the worlds of TV, film, pop culture, social media, everything really, depending on the guests. We talk about it all. As always, I'm your host, Peter Remoliotis, and on social media, you know me as PD Beats. You'll recognize my guests from a lot of really cool TV shows. Specifically, you will recognize her from The Gifted, The Purge, and most recently, Outer Banks as Deputy Plum. We were with Chelle Ramos. Chelle, welcome to Popternative.
Thanks for having me, Peter.
No problem. I'm glad we're able to do this. I mean, you got an opportunity to work on a lot of really cool shows, but specifically, like, people are going to kind of recognize you from Outer Banks, and that show seemed to just take off like wildfire. Congrats on that.
Oh my God, it was crazy. Like, I saw it, like, kept on going down, and then it was, like, number one for, like, either, like, a week or, like, a few days. I was like, okay, Outer Banks, get it.
And it's pretty cool because, you know, there's a lot of, for people that kind of watch the show, there could be, you know, opportunities for the deputies in season 2. You know what I mean? Not getting the spoilers, but it kind of it's left open for a lot of possibilities. And as a storyteller like yourself, that's exciting for you too, right? To see where the possibilities are for future seasons.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Especially the breakdown whenever I got Deputy Plum, like she was a dynamic character. And then like as the season goes on, like, you know, certain characters grow. Mine was kind of quiet at the beginning, and then the other episodes were able to unravel more. But then as other characters die off, then like as seasons come about, like you start plugging people in, and it's just fun. I think that's the fun thing about storytelling is that, like, you know, it keeps on going. It's
like a game of Tetris, right? Like plugging everything in.
Yeah, I love it. It's so fun.
So I refer to you as a storyteller because I refer to people who act, you know, whether they're acting, whether they're directing, producing, or writing, or even like musicians too. You're all storytellers. So I want to know, when did you decide that you wanted to be a storyteller, Chelle?
You know, I was a dancer first, and I just love the expression of like the human body and like what it can do.
Dancing could be storytelling as well.
Oh my God, yeah. Like, dancers are very. They're mostly like not trying to say, but they're decoration for a lot of like the actors and actresses and singers. And they could go through a lot of like hard work. And when I started to realize that, I was like, dang, there's another way to open up and being able to tell a story without having to use, you know, this body 24/7. So that's when I jumped in acting. Yeah. And I was like 17 and when I started like taking acting classes.
So how many official years have you been acting?
So, see, I don't want to say like the training part of it. To me, that's not like a full-time actress. Like when I first started getting my first paid gig, I think I was like 24 years old. So now I'm 31. So the math there that's how many years.
And you know what? That's about 7 years. And that's pretty cool because, you know, in those 7 years, I mean, 7 years is not that long. I mean, that's awesome. And you've booked some really cool shows. So congrats on that.
You know, I think the big thing was for me, and I'm very, very fortunate to have like really great mentors and really, just really continuous to have like a really great career. I have a really wonderful team. But I think the biggest thing for me was I continuously stay in classes. Yeah. Like I think that's what has been like a great trajectory for me. Was like, I've never stopped doing classes because we don't stop growing. In any career that we do, we don't stop growing.
So that's interesting. I was going to ask this question a little later, but it's perfect segue. You talk about growing. I mean, anytime you work on a show, whether it's, you know, the first gig you've done or the last gig you've done, you know, what are kind of some of the learning experiences that you've had on specific shows? Start with Outer Banks. What were some things, were there some things that you had to do as Deputy Plum that you haven't done before that was maybe a little uncomfortable in the beginning, or you had to get your groove? Like, talk a little bit about that experience.
Yeah, totally. So Outer Banks, that was the first time I ever had a role that was like small town. Yeah. I usually play like the badass assassin or like the killer or like a cop of some sort. And this one, she was more just like small town. And that's what the character was. Like she also is coming onto this team of people that have like everybody knows each other, and I'm like new to the group. So I think that was a little bit of a different experience. But I mean, the minute that I stepped on set, like everybody was like, "Oh, Deputy Plum!" Like they already like the. I mean, the minute that I stepped on set, like all the kids, like they were so amazing. Jonas and all the producers, like it's a very welcoming bunch. But I think that was the biggest thing was playing that small town. I've never had a character like that. Same thing like with The Gifted. I never had any like superpowers, and it's fun to experience like new things like that, you know?
It's like, you know what I'm going to ask? Because I was literally going to ask you about The Gifted. Yeah. Because I've saved a special spot in this interview for another show. I don't know if you want to hit where I'm going.
I got you.
I just want to get The Gifted out of the way so I can get to the good stuff. You know? No, they're all amazing. But no, The Gifted is obviously a show that's part of the Marvel Universe, part of the kind of the X-Men world a little bit.
Yeah.
And what I find really interesting about that, you can look at Marvel, you can look at DC as well, and specifically DC with like the CW. It just seems like they crank out show after show, and the fan base becomes loyal more and more when the shows come out. That excites, I feel like, a lot of actors that kind of want to get into acting and want to get into the superhero world, because the adaptation aspect of it too. Like you can have a comic book and there's like a character that's probably referred to like 2 times in a comic book, and then they can adapt him on the screen, right? Have you ever thought about that?
I mean, you know, it's so funny because before The Gifted, I've never really been hardcore into like, you know, the superpower, that type of science fiction. But afterwards, I was like, oh my God, this is so fun. Because there's so many more things that you can do, like outside of being like a human being. And so after that, I was like, oh my gosh, this is so fun. Like I had an audition a couple weeks ago, like playing like this alien, and I went like balls to the wall. Because it's just, after you get a taste of it, there's just so much freedom in it.
Absolutely. Did that show shoot in Atlanta?
It did. You did The Gifted?
Yeah, The Gifted?
Yeah.
So are you from Atlanta?
No, so I'm originally from Florida.
Okay.
Then I moved up and I got a spot in Atlanta, and I'm like 6 months in New York, 6 months in Atlanta.
Gotcha. Because I interviewed Haley Lovett, who played Sage on The Gifted.
Yeah.
And I believe she resides, I don't know if she resides in the Atlanta area.
Yeah.
And so does Kevin L. John. There seems to be a lot of like Atlanta seems to be rocking, right? There seems to be a lot going on there.
Yeah, Atlanta's really cool. Like, there's so much like greenery, and there's, you know, I like LA. I love New York. But there's just, I don't know. There's some kind of like the hominess in Atlanta.
Absolutely. No, it's amazing to see. And on top of my head, like there's so much. I mean, Stranger Things shoots in Atlanta, does it not?
Yeah, sure does.
Yeah, that's really, really cool. All right, so I'm a big horror fan. You were in the TV adaptation of The Purge, so we're gonna talk about that a little bit right now. A genre that continues to excite me, interest me, that is so complex and so growing is the horror genre. It is incredible to see. And The Purge was a series of very popular horror thriller films, and you got to kind of be in the television adaptation of it. Talk a little bit about that experience.
Oh yeah, that was so much fun. And it was very different from the first season because for every season they decided to do an anthology series, which was really cool. But that was a very amazing experience because there were 4 different storylines going on, and I was part of one of the storylines and like our crew. I've dealt with like guns and stuff before, but it was the first time because I was a chick on an all male crew, and like I grew up as like a tomboy, so like they like welcomed me and I fit right in. But it was the first time that I actually used the gun to like not just shoot, but like I was hitting guys off. Like that was a very different experience. So anytime that they were shooting something else, I grabbed one of the stunt people, or I grabbed somebody from tactical, and you know, I wanted them to teach me everything that they knew because I just haven't had a lot of experience trying to fight people off like with a gun. But it was great, like, and it was very gritty. We just had an amazing team. It was in New Orleans. It's hot as heck, but yeah, that was great.
I want to look back and see what the production timeline was with, like, when the first like Purge TV series season came out, because I remember it, like, Chelle, like I remember like seeing an announcement for the Purge TV show, and then like a month or 2 later, like it was out. And I don't know if I was late to the party. I don't know, but it seemed like the turnaround was pretty quick.
Oh yeah, they shot like, I mean, it's very quick. I mean, TV, it's just very quick, especially like, when they're wanting to get it out at a certain time, because it was shooting like in like the fall time area. So they wanted, it to be like going against that same, what's going on in our seasons right now. So
this is a question that we might get a yes and yes, or a no and no, or a yes and no, or no and yes. Does Chelle Ramos enjoy horror as an actor, and does Chelle Ramos enjoy horror as a fan?
I'm scared of horror films like nobody's business.
Okay, so
like,
no for the fan.
You know what's so funny too is because like being behind the scenes, like I know like all the squibs, I know that it's fake blood, I know all these things, but like when you have a good story that's going on, like a really good horror film, like I get the heebie-jeebies and I get scared. Like I have all my stuffed animals around me, like we're all watching together.
Well, me too, and I interviewed Lynn Shay, who is like one of my like she's one of my favorite kind of actresses, and it was really like she's an icon. She's in all the Insidious movies, and I was talking to her about that, and I was like, on the episode, it's interesting. Like I talk about like a scene, I was like, oh my god, like it scared me, and she starts like laughing, and I'm like, I was terrified. You know what I mean?
Yeah, it's crazy. Like, oh, I can't let. Like, what is that one? The Hills Have Eyes.
Oh yeah.
Jesus, it was scary.
But here's the thing. A lot of those movies, The Hills Have Eyes, and a lot of movies that talk about the heebie-jeebies, a lot of them have like the jump scares, like, oh my god, you know what I mean? Like you turn and a boo, you know what I mean?
Right.
I find, and that's why before I asked you about The Purge, I kind of talked about the complexity of the genre these days and the psychological aspects of things, because I feel like the writing and the people that are doing amazing things in horror right now are absolutely amazing and geniuses and becoming out of the box. And I feel like the horror that scares me is, and I've said this in other interviews, like I'm a fan of like the dinner party gone wrong ensemble cast genre. So you have a bunch of people, not even a dinner party, but a party or a gathering, or there's like an ensemble cast show, and then it's like, wait a second, that guy's acting weird. What's going on with that guy? Or she said something strange that like is clicking with something he did. You know what I mean? That's the stuff that scares me.
Right, because then it all when stories can tie back into something that happened in the first, oh my goodness, that's really good, because then it keeps you engaged.
Absolutely. Ensemble casts are one of my favorite things, and you know what? I thought about it more and more, and it's like I don't feel like they were there for a while, but I feel like in the last couple of years, especially in the streaming services, the ensemble cast has come out a lot more. I find like there's more shows with bigger casts. So I look at Outer Banks and there's like the 5 main kids, but there's also like all the deputies, there's their friends, their family. I mean, I feel like the love has been spread amongst the cast, and people like yourself that didn't get as much screen time as the big 5. You're seeing like there's some moments where we remember Deputy Plum, you know what I mean? And the show was so popular. Have you ever thought about that a little bit?
Yeah, of like how like the characters can grow.
Characters can grow, and and the love is spread amongst like everyone, even if it's like 1 or 2 scenes, even like Rob Mars. There are people on social media talking about Deputy Thomas. He even says he's like, I'm not in it that much. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Well, I think it also depends on the actor. So many people say that no role is small. I mean, there's been people that are just like super famous. That's how they got their jump, was a one-liner.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Seinfeld. There's a lot in Seinfeld.
Exactly. And that's what I'm saying. Like, if you can, so many actors, the ego gets so big and you take everything so personally. And if you just can transform your mind into, this is a story that you're creating and you're an aspect to it, then you just go so far. And that's what it's so fun about, like, characters that maybe are not as large, because there's opportunity for them to grow.
Let me know if I'm missing any, but like when I think of like TV show like phenomenons, like Supernatural, Walking Dead, Breaking Bad, Game of Thrones, Stranger Things, am I missing any? I think I nailed most of them, right?
Yeah, you did, definitely.
But like I feel like, especially with like the teen demographic, it's very early. But we're on to something with Outer Banks. I feel like becoming like a phenomenon. Like it's popular.
Oh my gosh, yeah, it's popular, and not only that, I feel like it's a story that's like, there's so many ones that are doing remakes, and then we have like 18 seasons of one season. Like, this is very different. They're very different content.
Absolutely. And Cullen Moss, who came on, who plays, Deputy Shoop and Sheriff Shoop. Yeah. So he came on, and I was saying a lot of people were referring to Outer Banks as like the new, Dawson's Creek and the new One Tree Hill. And he's like, I got the triple threat, baby. I've been in all 3 of those shows.
Oh, I didn't know that. Oh my God, that's amazing.
Yeah, he was in Dawson's Creek, and obviously he was Junk in One Tree Hill, and he had a huge role in that.
Wow. Did not know that. That's amazing. Yeah.
Yeah, Cullen Moss is incredible and has had such an incredible career in TV and film. Like, it is amazing.
Yeah, I didn't know that I just didn't know he was on One Tree. Like, he's an incredible human being. Like, he's a great actor, but like, there's some sleazy roles that he plays just because of his look, but he is an amazing person.
No, it's amazing. I mean, I've interviewed a lot of people from Outer Banks.
I know.
And they're all like fantastic. And it's like, I had an opportunity to talk to 2 of like the big 5, Rudy Pankau, who played JJ, and Jonathan Davis, who played Pope. And it's like, it's crazy. Like, I did an interview with Rudy on like the show came out on the Friday, and then I did an interview with him on the Tuesday. It was like 3 days. And it was like,
wow.
You know what I mean? It's crazy how it got quick, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
So what advice do you, you've been in the game for 7 years. You've worked with a lot of amazing people. You've had a lot of opportunities. You've been in shows where, you've worked with or been around, younger up-and-coming actors like in The Gifted, you know what I mean? Do you ever have on top of your head, like advice for some of these younger actors that are kind of going through what they're kind of going through right now with like the craziness? Like, it's nuts. I mean, it's a quarantine, so they have to stay. So maybe maybe that's a good thing in a little bit, but like, it's crazy what's being dealt with right now.
Oh my goodness. Yeah, it's super crazy. Yeah, I think like the one thing that, like, if this is me, if I was telling my younger self, is to make sure that you still stay connected with who you are.
Yep.
It's really important to do that because you're going to be pulled in so many different directions, and people are going to want to mold you, and use it as guidance. Don't use it to reinvent yourself, because when you start to do that, you really start to lose who you are.
Yep.
And people want you because you're an amazing person, just as you are.
Yeah, like I feel like, and even for like yourself and for Rob Mars and Gary Weeks, I feel like there's gonna be a lot of opportunities knocking once this is all done. Like I feel it, like, because there's so many eyes on the show.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? There's so many eyes. So there's like a way bigger chance now of someone being like, oh, Chelle Ramos played Deputy Plum. Oh, maybe we have a cop upcoming in a pilot on Fox. Maybe, you know what I mean? Like, you never know. Like, it could happen.
Oh, yeah. And it depends a lot on your team, too. If you're communicating, like, with your team, your managers, and your agents, like, I'm very fortunate to have a very, very good team. But, yeah, I mean, that all has to go through it,
Yeah, for sure. Well, Chelle, thank you so much for coming on Popternative. I had a blast chatting with you.
It was so fun. Thank you so much for having me.
No problem. Where can people follow you on social media to keep up to date with everything?
Yeah, I'm on Instagram, Chelle Ramos 24. That's pretty much it. I'm trying to like stay off social media.
You do some Instagram lives like cooking. I saw that.
I do. Yeah. So I'm raw. I only eat raw food. So yeah, I do that every Monday and Thursday.
That is amazing. Well, thank you so much. Congrats with the success of Outer Banks. I'm sure it's gonna continue to be popular.
Funny,
I don't see it stopping. I think you're all in it for the long run. I feel like it's gonna continue.
Yeah, I think so too. It's gonna be fun.
But that's amazing. Well, this has been Popternative. YouTube.com/Popternative for previous episodes. I just want to quickly plug that we have a lot of cool Outer Banks interviews. Like we said in the interview, there's a playlist on our YouTube channel of all the interviews, and Chelle's interview will be there as well. So you can just click one playlist and see all the interviews. So until next time, this is Chelle Ramos and PD Beats signing off.
Thank you for tuning in to Popternative. Make sure to check out our past episodes of Popternative on YouTube. Be sure to like Popternative on Facebook and follow us on Twitter.
This has been an Autograph Communications production.